Do Jews speak in tongues? And is the Torah really for everyone? This is Rabbi Yossi Madvig, and you're listening to Jews Did It First. Hey everyone, thanks so much for tuning in. I'm glad you're enjoying the show, and I really want to be able to share this with more and more people, so please like and share, whether you're on Facebook or whatever, share it in any way that you can. It'd be really great to get as many people listening as possible, and I think it's interesting. You guys think it's interesting, so why not share it? I think it's fairly uncontroversial. Even I'm not going to say that everything is totally 100% historically accurate. I'm sure I've made a few mistakes here and there, but as far as controversy goes, I'm pretty sure it's pretty safe for work and all those sorts of things. So I'd really appreciate you guys spreading the word. I, of course, only have a very limited audience to spread the word to, but of course you all know people that I don't. So it's been growing really great so far, and I just like to keep it on that trend. So without further ado, this week's topic is quite timely. As you've noticed, if you listen when they come out right away, you've noticed that they tend to be pretty timely. I try and make it fitting to something that's going on in the current, either something on the calendar or in current events. And there is a very interesting story in the Christian Bible that, without Jewish context, seems a little bit random and a little odd. In fact, it's credited by many Christians as being the founding of the church itself, of the Christian church. And the story goes that there's a period that's around 50 days after the crucifixion and resurrection, which was around Passover. And 50 days after that, many of the followers of this new faith were gathered in Jerusalem because it was a Jewish holiday, and we'll get into that. And suddenly the Holy Spirit descends on people, and they begin prophesying and speaking in different languages, and all these sorts of things. And it was this tremendous event in the Christian church that it's even celebrated today, especially by Catholics and Orthodox Christianity, and it's called Pentecost. Now, the word Pentecost comes from the Greek I think I'm going to pronounce it correctly, hopefully, Pentacoste, which means the 50th. So I told you it was 50 days after, so it's the 50th day. And that's because it was the 50th. Well, I'll explain why, actually, because this is where the Jewish context becomes very important. 50 days after the event is not just some random day. Now, many people might have the misconception that it's 50 days after the crucifixion or 50 days after the resurrection, supposedly. But really, it's 50 days after Passover. And the truth is, if you go by, I guess I'm trying to remember which one is which. I never remember now. I think it was the book of John that basically portrays the crucifixion as a Passover sacrifice. So if that's the case, then I guess it would work 50 days. I guess it would be 51 days after the crucifixion. And of course, it would only be, so then 3 days later, right? So 47 days after the resurrection. If you take into account the other stories of the crucifixion event, then it happens. I think the Last Supper is supposed to be a Passover Seder, a Passover meal in the other Gospels. So that would put the crucifixion after Passover already starts. So I guess it would be 50 days. Maybe it would be the first day of Passover. I'm not quite sure. I'm not exact. Maybe in the middle of Passover. It's kind of uncertain there. But the 50 days is only relevant in that it was the 50 days from Passover, and here's why. So like I said, Easter would be sort of going into Passover already because he was crucified on Passover, or he was crucified, the day before Passover, already a little bit into Passover. So, but either way, the resurrection story supposedly takes place already after Passover has started. But what happens right after Passover starts is that we start counting days. And there's a mitzvah, a commandment, to count every single day from the second day of Passover until the 49th day of Passover. Right now, we just counted 48 because I'm doing this at night on Thursday. So it's now the 48th day. And the mitzvah is spelled out in Leviticus 23:16. It says that on the, after the Sabbath, meaning after the Passover, you should count for yourselves 50 days. Now, elsewhere it says you should count 7 complete weeks, which, if you can do math, 7 times 7 is 49, not 50. Now, really, you're not counting the 50th day. The 50th day is the holiday, and it is called Shavuot. Okay? Now, Shavuot means weeks, so because we count 7 weeks, and then there's a holiday on that 50th day. And on the 50th day, and here's where it's very interesting that how the Jewish context really plays into this story. Okay, because the 50th day after the first Passover was the giving of the Torah. They counted 49 days. They're counting until they get to Mount Sinai. What are they counting for? They're excited about the giving of the Torah. Okay, they're counting every single day. Oh, now is 1 day, now is 2 days, and so on and so forth. Now you might ask, why weren't they counting down the days? Usually you do a countdown, right? 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. Why were they counting up? Well, there's different reasons that are given for this. But one of the more interesting ones I like is that they're counting towards something, right? That they're going up. They are moving towards something. They're elevating themselves. They're becoming better. During this time period, like I mentioned back a few episodes ago, we're working on ourselves. We're becoming better, working on our midos, on our character traits. And so we are constantly increasing in our service of Hashem. And so therefore, in our service of God. And therefore, we are increasing in the counting of the days. But what I want to stress here is that the Torah was given. So the author of the Christian Bible here, I believe it's recorded in Acts, the book of Acts or something like that. And I think it's mentioned in other places too, but it's irrelevant. The author isn't just writing some random story. I think that this is very intentionally meant to allude to the original Shavuot and the giving of the Torah. It's as if he's saying, oh, you see, the Torah was given on this holiday, so here's like the new Torah. This is the new way. And it even says over there that many other people were added to the fold and became Christian. And you see within a few decades that it really spread like wildfire. So I think it's coming to say this is the new way to go here. So quite fitting then that many Christians do hold this to be the founding of the church. And I think that also there's some other things. I think it mentions there was about 120 of his followers there. This may or not be sort of a parallelism here with the Anshe Knesset Gedolah, which was one of the most famous high courts in Jewish history, which was actually back in the days of Persia, that had 120 members. Usually the Sanhedrin, the High Court, has 71 members, as you may remember from your biblical history. But at one point it was stuffed to the gills, had 120 members. So this 120 members of the new court, so to speak, on this new giving of the Torah, as Christians would say it, seems to have been a very intentional message over here. So now it's coming up. It's coming up, the holiday of Shavuot. It's actually this Saturday, starts this Saturday night. and I'm taking my family away. We're going to spend it in a nice community in Lakewood, New Jersey. There's a big mixture of Jewish life over there, from very Hasidic Jews to very non-Hasidic Jews, and you've got a whole cholent over there, a whole mixture, and very excited. My kids get to see, be around a bunch of Jewish kids. Very exciting. And we get to have a sort of quote unquote normal holiday. It's the only holiday we get to do that. So we're all very excited about that. But I do want to, I'll talk about that in a little bit, but certainly suffice it to say that Pentecost is Shavuot, and Jews did it first. I'd like to close off with a little bit about the holiday of Shavuot. It's perhaps one of the lesser known holidays. There's not a whole lot to do. It's not like Passover where there's matzah and a seder and a whole thing. It's not like Sukkot where you've got building a sukkah and shaking the lulav and etrog and partying for a week. It's a couple of days, and there's no particularly special rituals, at least that are mandated by Torah law. There are quite a few customs that have sprung up. One of those customs is to stay up all night learning. And the reason for this is, it says in the Medrash that the Jewish people, when they finally got to Mount Sinai, what did they do? They went to sleep. And when the event happens, the giving of the Torah happens the following day, God comes down on the mountain, so to speak, and says, where is everybody? Because they all slept in. They're traveling for 7 weeks. Give them a break, right? So this was seen as not a good thing. And so to rectify that situation, instead of falling asleep on the night of Shavuos, we actually stay up the entire night until daybreak. And so that's one thing that we do. Another thing is that it's customary to do is eat dairy foods. Now, there are many reasons postulated for this. One is for kosher reasons, because they got the laws of kosher, so therefore they weren't able to do meat. So dairy is pretty easy to do kosher. Another reason is that the word chalav, which is how you say milk or dairy, that is equivalent. Every Hebrew letter has a numerical value, and the gematria, the numerical value of the word chalav, milk, is 40, just like the 40 days that Moses spent on Mount Sinai. So there's many other reasons that are given. I'm not going to get into them all now. What I would like to talk about, though, is one thing that happened at the giving of the Torah is something very strange. God comes with the 10 Commandments, right? And the Jewish people are there, and they hear the 10 Commandments, and the Medrash relates that as they're hearing the commandments from from heaven, their souls leave their bodies. It's too much for them to take. And what happens? The malachim, the angels, they push their souls back into their body, and it happens again. And so finally they tell Moses, you know what, Moses, this is too much for us. You go up to the mountain, listen to God, you tell us what he said. So Moses goes up, and he receives the Torah, right? He's there for 40 days, and so on. What this shows is a very interesting dichotomy, I think, in Judaism, about the idea that the Torah is for everyone, and that at the same time, we have teachers and leaders, those whose job it really is to understand everything and then disseminate that knowledge to the rest of us. And you see this, there's a joke that I heard, I don't remember when I heard it, it's a long time ago, right? That a rabbi and a minister and an imam, and they're all trying to, they're talking about their congregation. Say, I'll show you. This is the amazing. Watch this. Watch what happens in our congregation. This is great. And the minister goes up, and he intentionally says something wrong. He intentionally says, whatever it is, and Jesus rose on the fourth day, and he did it intentionally wrong like that. And the third day, he says the fourth day, and nobody says anything. Everyone just kind of, sits a little uncomfortable, kind of looking at each other, but nobody says a word. And he says to his friends, the rabbi and the imam, see, I could say, and they're not going to worry about it. I have tremendous amount of, the people trust me so much. And the imam says, that's nothing. And he goes to his congregation, and he says something intentionally wrong during the service, and people kind of sit uncomfortable, but no one really says anything to the imam. He says, see, my people are also very, very trusting, and they just, they'll whatever I say, they will do. The rabbi says, you want to see something? Come with me. And they go to the Saturday morning services, and the rabbi's up there reading from the Torah, and he says, Vaydaber Adonai el Moshe lemor. God spoke to Moses saying, and Vaydaber Hashem el Aharon lemor, and God spoke to Aaron saying, right, really, and all of a sudden everyone starts yelling out, Moshe, Moshe, Moshe. He said it to Moses because he was reading the Torah wrong. And he says, you see my people, this is great. They're engaged and they're constantly questioning, and if just because the rabbi says something, they know it's flying, and they're really connected to God. So it's a cute little joke, whatever. But it really brings out this idea that who is the Torah for? And God gives the Torah on Shavuos in a desert. It was on a mountain in a desert, right? In the Sinai desert. Why was it given in a desert? The reason it was given in a desert is uninhabited. It is also ownerless. Okay? So nobody can say, oh, this is my desert, right? The desert is like no man. We call it no man's land, right? Because it doesn't belong to anyone. The same is true with the Torah. The Torah doesn't belong to a particular individual. And so we might have leaders and teachers and people whose job it is to know the Torah and whose job it is to teach us the Torah. But at the same time, it's incumbent upon every single Jew to know the Torah, to know the mitzvahs, to learn God's wisdom, so that no one's going to come by and switch things up on you, and you're not going to, and you're not just going to go along with that, because the Torah belongs to every single person. And so, at the same time, right, they send Moses up. It doesn't mean that you get to be the boss of the Torah. It doesn't mean that you get to say, well, therefore, this is what I think the Torah means, right? We all own the Torah. It's not just your Torah, it's my Torah too. So I get to basically interpret it however I want. No, that's not the case. There is still a Moses. There is still a tradition. There is still a proper way to learn and understand the Torah. Now, yes, it's true. It says there are 70 facets of the Torah. There are many different ways to learn and interpret the Torah. But just because there is an interpretation of something does not necessarily mean that it is valid and correct. And so we always, like nowadays in modern society, it almost seems like whatever's new is good. The old thing, that was what we thought then, that was what we did then, and now this is the new and improved. In Judaism, it doesn't work like that. It's not whatever the newest thing is, the newest research shows this, and so on. You might have new insights into the Torah, but those are always checked against what happened in the past. There's always a looking backwards to say, is this a valid approach? Does this contradict what we've already been taught and know to be true? And if it does, then you might have to scrap your premise. You might have to start over again, because even though it's ours to learn and interpret and apply, it's not completely hefker. It's not completely ownerless. There is still that divine understanding as transmitted through the generations. So I want to wish you all the customary greeting or parting, I guess, that you should be makabel zayin de Torah b'simcha pnimius, that you should receive the Torah on Shavuos with joy and in an inward manner, that it should be penetrating. So, wish you all a good weekend and a Chag Sameach and a Shabbat Shalom.